we had three members lined up for today. One of them is Grant Gergen from Smoke Rings. And he's over there chopping brisket for the balloons over Angel Fire. So he'll join us on subsequent committees. We've got three or four other potential members. We're in the process of contacting right now, but they weren't able to come today. So I'd like to go ahead and get started. The call to order, if we could stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, roll call. We have Lori Willis, we have Randy Kaiser, and myself. The agenda that you've now either had or been provided, if you could take a look at that for a minute. And if I could get a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you.
A second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, there are no community members here, so we don't have any comments or questions from the audience. No old business. Our new business is at some point to elect a chairperson. Randy has indicated that he doesn't have time to do that. Is that something you'd be interested in, Lauren? All right.
No, sorry.
Understand. We'll move forward at the moment. I talked to village leadership and they told me that at the moment, the things that this committee could do that would be most helpful would be to go through this document you have in front of you and to upgrade and rewrite some sections of it. There's a lot of other things that this committee can eventually look at, but this is what we have before us today. I asked Kurt to be here since he's most familiar with the on the ground process to help us start walking through this and identify places where making changes would be helpful. So if Kurt, if you could.
Good afternoon, committee members, Mayor Pro Tem Howe, Clerk Strickland. First, I want to thank y'all for being willing to be on this committee. We need more people to get involved in this, and we're way behind and we got a lot of stuff to do. In reviewing Title VII, I've highlighted some things of concern, and I can go through those. And if you'll notice, right on the nameplates in front of you, there's highlighter pens.
Yeah.
If you feel so inclined to maybe highlight what Brad concerned about, we'll go through it pretty quick. It's not too bad, but I'll just I'll kind of hit on the points that I've highlighted and give an explanation of why I feel they need some discussion. Starting at 7-1-4-3. Under access. On the 10th page. Okay, under this, I'll go ahead and read it. Purpose and intent. Encroachment permits must be obtained whenever developer, contractor, property owner, or other individual proposes to connect a driveway to an existing public or private roadway or recreational pathway in the village of Angel Fire. The reason for requiring access permits is to ensure the design of the connection meets the specifications in these guidelines and allows for proper drainage. Access permits are also intended to ensure adequate reconstruction and or repair of any damage caused to the village street right of way or recreational pathway, easement right of way, roadway, or recreational pathway during construction of the connection. Access permits shall be obtained before building permits may be issued. I want to note that one, I think, overlooked component of an encroachment permit is the liability. Okay, and although in our packet for encroachment permits, it states that individuals need to provide proof of insurance. For homeowners, proof of liability insurance is acceptable. Contractors are asked to provide liability insurance, proof of workers' compensation, business license, and contractor's license. I feel that the verbiage in this ordinance should match what's in the permit packet. We do ask people to provide us with proof of insurance and ask contractors for business license and contractor's license. You'll see later in Title VII, there is reference to licensure requirements and insurance requirements in regards to utilities, but nothing with roads. So I feel that this is something we need to add into 7-1-4-3 is to include in there that the purpose and intent of the encroachment permit is to give the person to legally do work on our property. To give a scenario, if somebody was working in the village right away, didn't have workers' compensation, one of their workers got hurt, we could potentially be on the hook for it. Okay.
So as Kurt goes through this, if either Randy or Lori have questions or comments, then please.
So are people getting? Are they actually applying for and getting the permits, or are they just going out and you're finding out they're doing work?
There's a good number of people, obviously the people that know the process, that they come in and they get their encroachment permit before they start. The asking for proof of insurance, even though it's been on that application for a number of years, wasn't really enforced where we've started to enforce it. And everybody has been good about providing it, even homeowners are providing us with either their personal liability policies or their builder's risk if it's new construction. There are definitely, and it is something that we're trying to get resolved, there are still a number of people that go out and start work before acquiring the permit. And in reality, if any step that's going to be taken where they're going to be working on within the village right away, they need to have that encroachment permit.
Does that include even just if they're not going to be doing any improvements other than an actual cutting in a driveway if they're on a flat lot somewhere? Do they still need an encroachment permit?
Depends on what they're going to be doing. I mean, if any of the work involves crossing that village right away, even if the driveway is not cut in, say somebody's thinning their lot and they've hired a contractor to come in and drag slash off, and that contractor is bringing the stuff out and putting it on the road to load, so forth and so on. Their part of their activity is within the right of way. So in my opinion, really any work that's going to be done on a lot that's going to involve them crossing the road profile, from the road profile across the road right of way to the edge of their property, encroachment permit should be obtained.
So do you know whether the P and Z, when they approve a single family home application, whether an encroachment permit is part of that process with the village?
It's currently not, and I feel that's a big problem, and I brought it to the attention of the manager and planning and zoning. That I feel the encroachment permit personally should be obtained before a building permit is obtained. And so we're currently looking at methods of how for this and other reasons, we want it to be a one-stop shop. We want people to come in and get all of the necessary permits. Cause what's been currently happening is people will get a building permit. And if it's a contractor from out of town or a homeowner or an owner builder that is not familiar with the process, they don't even know to get an encroachment permit, even though it's listed in the documents needed. It's something that can be easily missed if it's not understood. And and there is absolutely the element of some people that are just going out and working, they know better, they know they're supposed to get it, and they just kind of wait till they get caught and then come in and get it. So I feel that having it as part of the permitting process, where it's a requirement before the building permit is issued, is gonna weed a lot of that out. And I think, getting language in ordinance as far as the insurance is concerned, but also the business license and contractor's license is going to ensure that we have people out there doing the work that are properly licensed to do so. We don't have the ability to enforce licensure, but we can ask for proof of it. And then if it's not provided, then CID, Construction Industries Division, are the only ones that can enforce licensure violations.
Chuck, tell me, why isn't an issue like this, why is it even going through our committee? Why isn't it just elevated to the council to do immediate action on it? Because if it is a liability issue, and then I can see where it would be, I mean, we're spinning our wheels here where it could be on a council agenda, elevated right up and go through. I can't imagine any of the council objecting to having insurance liability or some type of liability coverage for anytime any encroachment is done, and that part would be taken care of.
So I can address that. Council likes this to know that the things that come to them in some instances have been reviewed by someone else. There's other items we'll be looking at in here. So if we can walk through these today, I'll take the job of being the secretary. I'll write all this up in draft. I'll bring it back to you. You guys either say, that's what we want, that's, you got it right, and then I'll move it to council, letting them know that this committee has looked at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, another thing to add to that answer is the fact that even though this, is obviously you're in agreement, this is a very important issue. It's not necessarily going to be received well by every member of the community. Maybe some contractors, maybe some homeowners, and to understand the purpose of the committee is to be the voice of the community. So,
we're going to disagree on that. Just because as being a member of the community, I'm not going to be at the forefront out there taking the heat when I'm not one of the elected officials that should be taking the heat and the responsibility for that.
Understood.
So, no.
Understand.
No, I'm not doing that. I've been there, done that on the council before in Texas for 9 years, taking the heat, and making the decisions. And that's all we are, is an advisory board, period.
That's what this is. And this will go to council as having come from an advisory board. Council has the option to approve or change.
Right.
And council will make that decision, but this helps council.
And also part of this exercise is to have committee members review all of Title VII. These are points that I brought up, and see if you notice anything in there, so.
No, I'm not trying to come down on you. I'm just
Oh,
telling
no,
you
I don't
that
take, sir, I'm not thin skinned, don't worry about me. So I don't take it that way at all. Because, in one respect, what I'm reading into this, what you're saying and agreeing with, here we are in June of 2025. And, the Roads and Infrastructure Committee was, the talk about putting it together started with the new administration in January of 2024. And this is a serious issue, and we're not just now discussing it. I feel the same frustration, but it's a process I've been directed to follow. In the same, code under access, something I highlighted, if you notice down at the bottom of paragraph B, is something I need to get some clarification on. Bonds will be posted with and permits obtained from the village planning department. Okay, so, there's a contradiction from the process of what we're doing right now, in that the permits are being obtained from Public Works, where here it states in ordinance that the permits are obtained from the village planning department. If that is going to be the case moving forward, then it's good as it stands, but it's not in alignment with what's actually being done right now. Okay, and then on the next page, under D, procedures, requirements for issuance of encroachment permits. I noted that under, on number one, it lists the submittal requirements for encroachment permits. And they're all listed there. Here again, it brings up one of the submittal requirements should be proof of insurance. And then to go down from there on number two, in the last sentence, building permits shall not be issued for the project until approval is granted for the needed encroachment permit. So here again, I think there's language in here that supports what we want to do, but it's not what we're currently doing.
is part of the problem because of our because of where we are here in the valley, and the limited number of contractors that we have that are doing this kind of things, is part of the problem. Just having weather access. If you have a contractor that's ready to go, there can be a disconnect between when P&Z grants permit to move forward, because not only does P&Z have to grant the permit, but if it's in the resort area, the Architectural Review Committee also has to approve that. So there's time delays in making sure, plus then the state permit has to be acquired as well. So there's time delays. I think it's incumbent upon the village and the Architectural Review Board, which sometimes we do permit via email for voting and stuff, to try to speed this up so that contractors aren't waiting to get all of the permit process done, so that they can go in to have access to their work site by getting this encroachment permit. So somehow or other, the village needs to try to work with them so to when they have weather allows them plus the time of the year to be able to have access to put that, the encroach and put that culvert or the open face drain the grade it drains across depending upon the slope and that type of situation. You kind of get where I'm going with this?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because also, and we need to be flexible enough with our methods to accommodate those different situations. Because say if it's a scenario where there's an existing house and yet they want to do another driveway entrance, well, they don't need a building permit for that. So we need to leave
Right.
the avenue open. I think in the new construction component that it should all be together, but we still need to have available the option of coming in to just get the encroachment permit.
Right.
And it's not related to any, there's no building permits required or anything like that. Or if somebody is, is doing a significant thinning project where they're gonna have to impact the road. We need that encroachment permit in the deposit to ensure that we have means of doing repairs if they're needed after.
Oh, sure.
And,
Sure, no, I agree with that.
so I think to just say this is the only way we're gonna do it, it's all done with the building permit, we still have to have that avenue to address all the issues that don't involve a building permit.
Is it easier for you, do you have the time commitment available if that permitting process went through you instead of P and Z?
I definitely do not have the time to do the full building permit package.
No, I'm talking about just an encroachment permit.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Okay, is that working?
It works when the people come by to get them. When it doesn't work is when people get a building permit and get the house almost complete. They haven't even built their driveway in. And for 2 years, we're dealing with mud being tracked up on the road, drainage being impacted. We had one construction site where they were filling the bar ditch full of dirt so they could drive in and out of it. They were shoving boards and lumber in it so they could drive across the bar ditch. All these things happen. I was in the excavation business a lot of years. Every job we ever did, when we started a house, the first thing we did was build a good workable driveway into the job site. First thing. Part of why we want to change the methods is to get people to get that entryway constructed early on. So during the construction phase, we're not dealing with a couple of years of having to repair the road. And because it does happen. And quite frankly, there's, again, if we keep we really want to get the building permit process to where it includes the encroachment, because plain and simple, some people just don't even realize they need to do it.
Yeah, and that makes sense to do that for those major projects that you're doing for single family. And that's why I was specifically asking for, on the single family, whether that can happen. And maybe it's a different situation now that you've got a full-time P and Z guy here.
Sure.
That would make a big difference, and maybe that could, to streamline the process, it can all go through him.
Well,
But you also have, the village now has Joel, who's code enforcement, that can go out, and if he sees an infraction, then do something different than what the village has always done in the past and actually enforce the ordinances.
yeah. Well, I can verify that on occasions, because I have a really good feel of what I have encroachment permits for and what I don't. I'm very familiar with this town since I've lived here since 1983. And worked on everywhere around the village. As I'm out doing whatever task I'm doing, assessing roads or going from point A to point B, I see a new house going up. I know the address. I don't have that encroachment permit. Joel gets a call. And he's already.
Is that currently?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and even just this spring, right off the top of my head, I can think of three instances where I noticed new construction starting. All three of them were owner builder situations. And one I was able to just mention to the people they need to get the encroachment permit, came and got it. The other ones mentioned it to Joel. He went up and told them, people came in and got their encroachment permit. So. And the new planning and zoning director is working on methodology to be able to track all of the different stages that building permit applications are in. That's gonna show what's missing, and one of the elements that he is gonna have on that sheet is whether or not there's been an encroachment permit. And so what this is gonna allow us to do, instead of relying on going, oh, there's a job site and I don't have an encroachment permit. All the data is gonna be connected. We'll be able to identify, hopefully, as early as possible, that it's something that they need to get.
So is there something in the permit or the ordinance or something that says that the encroachment has to be done first? Cause I could get an encroachment permit and be good with you, except for the fact that I don't do the driveway until way late in the process, like you were talking about others do.
Yeah, and in all actuality, it's almost impossible to get to the building site without encroaching.
Mhm.
That's why it is a first step.
I couldn't imagine a time that you wouldn't have encroachment,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
I agree, but if they're not required to do it before they start building or.
Yeah, I think part of
It's
the
the
problem,
first part of the
I
process.
really believe, again, and I've looked through this stuff a lot, but I was reviewing some stuff this morning. And I believe there is verbiage in here that says that it is required at the and well, I just touched on it on item number 2, building permit shall not be issued for the project until approval is granted for a needed encroachment permit.
yeah, but I can also envision times when people are building a home, they want a temporary driveway, a culvert or a tin horn or something in that bar ditch. Because an open grate drain, culvert type situation isn't sufficient for running concrete trucks and stuff over it when they're pouring foundations and
Yeah.
bringing in heavy loads of lumber and stuff, because
Sure.
that, if they lose a tin horn, that's a lot easier than losing, and a lot cheaper in the long run than losing one of those open grate.
Absolutely, and that plan can all be dictated in the encroachment permit application. Very open to that, very understanding. I will say that when I started this job, what I walked into is there had been the method had been established where the contractor would come in and get the encroachment permit, do first inspection where first inspection is where you're gonna put the culvert, go over grades, everything. Second inspection is after the culvert is installed. And what had been practiced is and what it was causing is contractors would meet out there, get the first inspection, get their culvert in, get the second. They would base course from the edge of the road to the edge of the property line, say, okay, can you give me a final? Okay, I don't allow that because of concrete trucks, lumber trucks. And it's amazing that 3 of the contractors that had asked me to do that, and I refused to do so, were upset about it, and go to all 3 of those jobs right now, and the ends of the culverts are crushed, drainage is bad, so forth and so on. So I won't do a final inspection till the project's done, okay? But yeah, it's something that we need some refinements in, and quite frankly, some of the methods that I have been using to enforce this, dare I say, this is the way they've been doing it, and I've just continued it because everybody's accustomed to it. I've been reluctant to make major changes because a lot of these jobs are already bid, already in process, so forth and so on. But plain and simple, what it all comes down to is some of the way we're doing things isn't following ordinance, isn't following code. And we've got to start following this, but we have a few things that we need to get established in here. And an example of which would be, and it's something that I don't know if we'll discuss today, but it's something I want you to consider, is that as I took the job, I had a lot of questions, people asking me, well, is it required to do a transverse drop inlet or box culvert on uphill driveways? and looked into it, and nowhere in the code is it required. They had been told that it was required. But the discussion we need to have is, should it be required? You know, it's definitely, it seems to be, in most cases, when installed properly, it's resolved long ongoing issues of driveways damaging roads. Seems the best method. So are we, you know, at a point where we want to put it in the ordinance that those are required on uphill driveways? Then we have to define true uphill driveways, okay? Or do we want to, you know, there is a specification in driveways that they can't be steeper than 12%. If they are, it needs design and variance. Do we require box culverts on grades greater than 10% grade? You know, something to consider. You know, that's what's tough about getting something like that in ordinance, is if it's loose-ended and has criteria. But even something as simple as saying they have to be on all uphill driveways, we have to have a clear understanding and definition of what uphill driveway is. It has to specify a grade that raises an elevation from the edge of the existing road profile. I don't know.
Let me pose this up to you. Even, wouldn't you say that even a 2% grade variant on an uphill driveway is enough to create and allow sediment onto village streets? Absolutely,
Especially given distance, and I mean, that's twice the minimum grade of sewer pipe. And sewer runs in a 1% pipe, it's cooking through there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, how do you know, there has to be that definition of uphill, and I'm sure there's verbiage for it. But I've had the conversation with Mayor Pro Tem Howe about because the conversation has come up about the driveways steeper than 12%. There are a lot more lots now being acquired that weren't the cream of the crop, that are those steeper lots. And, you know, we obviously can't say, well, there's no way to build a driveway up there. But in speaking with Councilman Howe, we think it would be just more streamlined if we were going to make it a requirement for a box culvert on uphill of the existing road, to just make it for every driveway that's on the uphill side of the road, whether it's 1% or 15%. So something, you know, to think about.
So if I could interject something here, most of what we're talking about is for new construction, but what about current situations where there's an obvious problem? How do we address that?
Enforcement.
Yeah. And we've had the discussion in the one roads committee we had, where we talked about roads. There was a point of discussion, and what I'd mentioned at that time, and I'll repeat it, the experiences I've had in the past, the methods of enforcement, how they initially started. One method that didn't get very good results was just showing up with enforcement with an iron fist, do this or you're gonna get fined, blah, blah, blah. Didn't get very good response. The second and the worst, that was very short-lived, was if your driveway's not draining right, we're just gonna rip the end of it out, put our bar ditch in. That didn't work well at all. So
I can imagine.
what I have proposed, absolutely there needs to be enforcement. But I truly believe if we start out with notification, that's the first step. Because I'll share one of many similar stories that I've had just in the short time I've been on this job. I get a call from a gentleman and he says, gosh, right before I get to my house, the road is really, really rough. Is there anything you guys can do about it? And I go up there and I meet with him, and I point out to him the fact that the road is rough because the water's coming off of his driveway, his culvert's plugged, and going across the road. And the thing is, we make the assumption that everybody looks at things the same way we do, given our backgrounds or experience or whatever. But this gentleman, as soon as I pointed out to him that it was coming from his driveway, he said, it didn't even dawn on me. And yeah, we think it would be obvious, but he got it fixed right away. So I personally feel that if we take the approach of notifying people properly, in a proper manner, that a good number of them will resolve the situation without it having to be a battle. But I think, you know, we also need to, in a real nice way, you know, we identify it to and be able to say, okay, if you're not willing to do this, then here's what we have in ordinance to force you to do that. The problem is our ability to enforce on existing driveways, some of which they could potentially produce a approved encroachment permit. They say, well, it was fine back then. Why is it bad now? So that is really something that we need to get into ordinance of how we're going to enforce on existing driveways.
Part of your enforcement is, like anything else, has to be notification. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to, as an example, you don't have to send out notification saying this has to be done in the next 15 days, 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
But what you do, what you can do is send out notification that says that in some type of verbiage, we've got a problem here, that has to be remedied. And the problem is that because of runoff and erosion from their existing driveway, it's impacting a thoroughfare, which benefits all village people. So you give them, like the fire adaptive committee has given X number of days, years, whatever it takes. You haven't had any kind of enforcement for the last 20 years, so you can't expect everybody to comply in the next year.
Yeah.
So if you can get people to a small percentage to comply in the next 2 years, you're that much better off. And so you keep working on that, and keep working towards that goal to where you have at least a 70, 80, 90% compliance. And once you get to that point, then your enforcement then becomes fines and more severe type punishments to make them comply. But the other people most will probably comply because it's actually going to benefit them.
Absolutely. And that's why I say that's the approach we need to take, not the approach that's been taken in the past. But also, and this is where, you know, and this is something we need to think about. How do we get it in the ordinance? Because there's nothing in ordinance that addresses existing driveways. Okay. And say it is the situation where a driveway has been installed, there was an encroachment permit, got the final inspection, it was all approved. And then the driveway has never been maintained since. Okay,
At some point, there has to come a time when you have to say enough is enough.
yeah, but we need to,
And if you don't start that process, you're never going to get to take that first step to say, this is where it ends. Then it just continues with no enforcement and things just continue to escalate out of control, so to speak.
sure.
So you have to say, this is the point in time that we are going to start enforcing. That's notification, whatever, to send out notifications that say that we're looking at this. And this is what's going to be happening, because you have to. Because the village spends a lot of money maintaining roads that as soon as they're maintained and you get a half-inch rain, you're almost right back in the same situation or worse.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
today's
I'm
the
a little
first
familiar
day
with
of
that.
that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to. I mean, it's the dark sky, all of those, you know, part of the thing with the dark sky and the comments has been, well, how do we enforce it? Well, you haven't been enforcing the existing ordinance.
Because
So-
there isn't proper ordinance in place.
So at
right
some
now.
point in time, you have to say, now is when you start doing that.
Okay. Yeah, and you know, is saying that there's no ordinance to enforce it, that's what we're hoping to get into ordinance right now. Because it's not good, it's not there, and that's why we're having this
Well, that's
discussion
pretty
about
simple.
ordinance.
All it is words on a paper.
Okay.
The hard part comes in enforcement.
Yeah, I realize that. And enforcement is hard enough and it's time consuming, it's emotional, it's everything else. And you know what? It gets even harder if you don't have ordinance. in
And it's
place.
an expense that some people are just, you have to give some allowances because there are people in this valley that own lots, that if you told them it's gonna cost them, they have to put in some kind of mitigation to prevent sediment from flowing on the streets, and they find out it's gonna cost them $10,000-15,000 to do it, they're gonna go, we can't do that, we can't afford it.
So,
So you've got a problem there as well, but
and
with,
you bring up a point in the encroachment permit process. We require a $1,500 deposit. That's refundable after passing third inspection. Some of these driveways can be non-compliant. They don't pass that third inspection. But to fix it and make it right, costs a lot more than $1,500, so you can deposit.
right,
These are the kind of things that we're hoping. to
that's
get
one of
worked
those
out.
punitive measures that you have to, that has to be passed by the council. And they have to take the heat for that. Not this committee.
Well, our goal is to get council something to make a decision on.
Sure.
The other thing about existing homeowners though is they need to be educated. Until the last meeting that you referenced, I never gave my culvert a thought, ever. And then I looked at it and I'm like, wow, it's half blocked on one end on one of them. I'm like,
Yeah.
great.
And as I mentioned, I think there are a large number of people out there that just don't realize the damage that we've had. And I've talked with Joel and we hope to get it going here sometime. It's been a bigger challenge than expected. About, I would initially want to go out with him and look at different scenarios so he knows what to identify and know what the issue is. But we have a plan to go get a list of all of these addresses that have issues and create that list to send that initial letter to people. With pictures, with documentation, a brief description of what the issue is. But also to be available if they don't understand what the issue is, be able to set up time with me to go look at it and review it. One difficulty that I have is that really the only section of a driveway that I feel I can really provide input on is what's within the village park. I have to walk a fine line offering, and it's a hard thing for me to do, is to go up and, you know, as a former excavation contractor, you know, I want to walk all the way up to the house and trace the whole root of the drainage problem, this, that, and the other. But I'm really limited on what I can do. I really have to focus on the part that intersects with the village road. Even though I can look up and see that there's other contributing factors, other things they can do up above that would help them. I have to be careful. I can't recommend different contractors, even though there are some that I would recommend over others. But yeah, I think here again, I think the best approach to start out with is education, because some people just simply are not aware.
And you say you can't recommend contractors or whatnot. I don't know how to pick a good contractor,
Yeah.
and I don't have much luck picking good contractors, I can tell you that. And then they may be 6 months out, and it's like, then we're back in the dead of winter, and it's probably not gonna happen, and
You know, going back
there's
to
a
the,
lot of, on my end of stuff, where I'm like, this is gonna be hard.
Can't the village maintain a list of contractors, of licensed contractors that people that you could give to, homeowners that are requesting, you know, an encroachment permit, it would help the contractors and it would help the people that are doing it, and they're licensed, you know about them. Whether that's 5 or 10 or 15 or however many contractors that you do that, but at least you're not, if you do that, to me, then you're actually trying to assist the homeowners to comply with what the village is asking. And it's not something that's difficult to do. Because you know who the contractors are, they can agree to it, and I would suspect that you would want them to have a list. But a lot of cities will have in order to operate in within their boundaries of the city, they have to be on a list
And
and
approved
registered in
contractors.
that city, in that village or city, in order to do work in that city.
yeah, going back to what I mentioned before in requirements that are listed on the permit, one of them is a business license. Angel
Yeah,
Fire business
yeah.
license.
So, I mean, that would be a simple thing to help
Mhm.
any homeowner out.
Well, you know, and I spoke with Manager Weir about this. I'd like to take it a step further and do, and I know it could get, I'm sure they would come to it, but, actually do a meeting to go over information, and a good point to do this is when we initiate these changes and we want to get them out and want to send invites out to all contractors to come to a meeting where we're going over ordinances, changes or enforcements that are going to be made. And essentially anybody that comes to that meeting and goes through that training, then we're gonna have them we're gonna list their trades. But also it's absolutely, you know, that's me wanting to get them together and go over, you know, be able to convey changes to them and not have them not find out the hard way or whatever. But also to motivate them to be aware of what we want to do with our ordinances and how we want to enforce them. But yeah, a list of business licenses in Angel Fire and what businesses that they have, I think is
With an
very
asterisk
doable.
saying they came to the training, they know what is correct.
Yeah,
And then, should they do something that violates something, the asterisk disappears because they didn't learn anything from the training.
yeah.
I mean, there has to be a consequence on their end too.
Well, it's things to consider, and that's kind of things as a committee is great for discussion. You know, how can we, you know, it's all about how can we better serve the community? You know, everything that we do should be motivated by what's best for the community. But guy back there that tells me that's always the question. When if I'm gonna get a yes or a no, the question is raised, what's best for the community? Okay,
Well, here's another question for you.
okay,
And and I know that there are some areas that there's an issue. If somebody has an uphill lot that requires one of these open grate drain systems to keep sediment from flowing onto the road. And they put it in, but the problem is that the adjoining lots and that area on both sides is flat enough that you're not getting drainage crossed to drain out the bar ditches. So what happens then is any sediment that flows off of this property owner into this open grate, all it does is essentially that sediment just sits in there instead of flowing on through one direction or another. So now there's maintenance that has to be done because that thing fills up to the top. The next thing you know, it's flowing right back onto the street. How do you, and you're limited because you can only cut a bar ditch so deep. to get it to drain in one direction or another, even a 1% slope. But in particular, and as an example, there's areas on Colonial that on that uphill side, that water sits in there. It doesn't drain. And I know you guys have gone through and cut that bar ditch some more, but it just sits in there and drains. How do you mitigate that? Because I, as a homeowner, if I'm gonna spend 10 grand or more on one of these homeowners, I'm gonna be pissed if this thing fills up from drainage, from sediment coming off of my road, and yet it's not being carried away like it should be to drain on downhill. So I'm gonna be coming in here stomping mad, because now I've got, not only did I spend the money to put this in, but now I've got maintenance issues every however many years or however long. So all I'm doing is kind of throwing out a scenario that kind of needs to be thought through. And I'm not disagreeing that we still need some type of system to prevent that sediment from flowing onto the street. But we also have to take it a step further to make sure that that water that's hitting that bar ditch and is draining on past the property. That's all.
Okay, and just know that, you know, another, and you touched on a lot of the bar ditches simply aren't deep enough. We require an 18-inch culvert, and there's a 6-inch deep bar ditch. Okay, pretty much most of the contractors that are doing culvert installations and come in when they're in that situation where there's not enough bar ditch to accommodate the culvert. If the culvert can't be set back in a manner where it'll drain sufficiently, then they coordinate with us to get the bar ditch work done. Okay, if it's doable. Okay, as you mentioned that in some places, you said you can only go down so far. Some areas, the road profile is dropped low enough and to take the bar ditch deeper, then we start encountering the existing utilities. Okay. Other areas where standing water exists and so forth and so on, and trust me, Colonial is not the only place, are areas that we need to look at to improve drainage components, put a cross culvert, get the water across. This creates a challenge if that culvert's discharging onto another property, how that's going to be addressed. There's methods. It's not as simple as just putting a culvert in. But where it's absolutely necessary, there's cross sections of roads up here that should have a cross culvert and don't, and the water runs right over the top of them. Very well aware of it. Now, last fall, as our fiscal year starts midsummer, so it's late last summer as we started placing base course. The majority of the roads we placed base course on had, I don't think everything has perfect drainage, but had sufficient drainage that allowed us to just base course. Some roads I was not ready to go in and base course because the drainage needs to be addressed first. That's why this next fiscal year, there's going to be more emphasis on drainage improvements than there is just covering miles of road with base course. So there are multiple areas, and we're aware of those, but also if somebody's putting in a box culvert and there's an apparent drainage issue that is gonna disallow it from functioning properly, then the burden's on the village to make sure that that drainage is provided. And I will say that it happens with regular culverts also. We want to put a culvert in and get the where the driveway joins the road profile right. But in order for them to be able to do it, we got to work on our bar ditch. And when it works out, it's great. And for the most part, we're able to coordinate with the contractor where they put that culvert in. And in some cases, we'll go in behind them and work the bar ditch. Sometimes it's more beneficial for us to go in and work it before. And it's very doable, and we're willing to do that if it gives the best product.
Just giving you a scenario that could be possible issues.
Well, I've ran into the scenario before already, so. But you're right, and that's, you know, back to the discussion about the box culverts, that's gonna be the most emotional part about it is the cost.
Oh, sure.
And, but something that is that important, you know, there's part of me that says if you're building $1 million house, you can pull off 10 grand for a culvert.
Yeah, that's not those particular people aren't the issue.
It's the me's.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, the thing is, and this is what we need to discuss, if we put it in the ordinance, it's what's going to be done moving forward. Again, how do we, in ordinance, address existing conditions? And to, you know, to me, if there's a requirement made for a box culvert on uphill driveways and it starts on a certain date, anything before that is essentially grandfathered in. But what we need in ordinance is something that touches on a drainage issue on an existing driveway. And the thing is, a lot of times the repairs that are needed isn't a replacement of the culvert. It isn't the putting in a box culvert. It's, hey, you know, the last 10 years of snow removal has taken all your base course off. And I know it has, because it's on the other side of the road.
Well, one thing you might want to budget for is, and present to the council, is some sort of a cost sharing over a number of years. And then you get compliance. You can do so many of them a year. That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
Particularly if you could even do it on a basis.
There's so many of these driveways that the issue could be addressed without them having to even touch their culvert. If they just did maintenance on their side,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But here again, you know,
Right.
you're going back to the E word, enforcement. How do we get somebody on their property to do the maintenance on their driveway and enforce it?
You can have all the ordinances in the world, and quite honestly, Kurt, if the council or the city or village or whoever it is decides they don't want to enforce it, doesn't mean anything. They're just words on a paper. But it all boils down to, you have to, if you're going to have the ordinance, you need to figure out a way to have people comply with it. Because if you don't, there's no point in even going through the steps to put the words on the paper.
Yeah, but yet it's still, you can't enforce without something in ordinance. It is still important to have the ordinance, because if somebody, yeah, it's, yeah, I get what you're saying. You're saying we need to start enforcing. But to go out and enforce and have it just be a futile effort, because there's no way
Yeah, but
to totally get it through.
And don't take when I say enforcement to the level of going out with the red lights flashing and everything and the
No,
handcuffs
yeah.
out.
No.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is enforcement encompasses a pretty big thing, a lot of steps that can happen in enforcement. And education absolutely can be part of that.
Mhm.
Enforcement. That's the first step, that you educate. And then you continue to take more and more steps to where the people that want to ignore all of these others or don't have the means to comply with the ordinance, that's where you come in with possibly some cost sharing. Then you end up with true enforcement where they're going before the judge to prove that they can't comply or whatever other steps the village decides they want to implement. But a cost sharing gives them people the opportunity, the village, the opportunity to help these people comply. And in the long run, it's cheaper for you to put in $5 grand or whatever that amount is that you decide. It's cheaper than continuing to rebuild the roads around this area that is in non-compliance. You see what I'm saying? So I really think that that's something that should have some serious consideration. So, but anyway,
Any anti-donation issues involved with cost sharing? Mr. Chairman, if you're elected? No chairman yet.
We don't have-
Um,
It's us.
So there are state statutes that stand in our way of just doing whatever we want. One primarily is the anti-donation clause, which says we cannot spend public money to benefit private individuals. It has to benefit the community.
even in their right of way.
Well,
Because now this.
here's the thing. That's a great point. Here's the thing. The way the ordinances are set up now, it's our right of way, but the property owner owns the culvert and the driveway. Where the encroachment permit gives them the permission to put that in and have that access, but it doesn't give the village ownership. They still own it. So technically, in anti-donation, we can't spend money on it because we don't own it. Now, that's something that I think could be addressed in the ordinance. Because you can require them to donate that to the village. It happens in a lot of places. You're required to go, we basically do it with sewer connections now. They have to go connect it, but as soon as it's connected, it belongs to us. So, but that's not the way the ordinance is set up, and that's one of the reasons why this ordinance needs to be reworked. And so that's a consideration. I'm not telling you what to do. I mean, I have my opinions, believe me, I can tell you exactly what I want. But the reason we have committees like this is we're trying to serve the public. So we need public input. So it just doesn't seem like we're ramrodding things down everybody's throat. And, but that's a consideration that you would have in rewriting Title VII is that once the encroachment is approved, that the homeowner agrees that that property now belongs to the village.
Isn't that box culvert placed in the public right of way?
It is,
Anyway.
but we don't own it.
I understand.
Yeah, but it's in the right of way, but the encroachment permit gives them permission to put it there in our right of way.
Right.
But it doesn't say they gave it to us. It doesn't say we're now the owner of that.
But once that ownership would be turned over to the village, then you end up having to do the maintenance on it as well.
That's the other side of the coin. That's what I'm saying. This is what needs to be discussed. Because we could do, that'd be easy to say, okay, now everything that's in our right of way belongs to us. Now, there's budgetary constraints, we don't have unlimited funds, so now what's it gonna cost us to go maintain all those? I mean, if I had the money, I'd go put drop culverts in everywhere and be done with it. And quite frankly, most of them, the grade comes out, so your scenario, clean that, it's a lot easier to clean that out than it is a culvert.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
Sure,
then,
I agree. No, there's no doubt about that.
well, I don't know, Kurt, maybe I'm.
Yeah, no, it's way easier, trust me.
So the thing is that, we struggle right now, but, and there's multiple factors. One is budgetary constraints, we have limited resources. Even if we had the money, could we find the people? We struggle finding people to come to work for us. And then the other thing is anti-donation, which is the law that says that we have to use our money for public good and not to benefit an individual. And which we could go do whatever and, like our lawyer tells me often, it's not a problem until it's a problem. So we could go start doing this stuff, but as soon as somebody that's pissed off at this administration complains and calls in the attorney general, and then they're gonna come after us and we're gonna spend $100,000 on legal fees.
And the first thing they're gonna look at when the battle starts is if what we're asking is truly properly defined in ordinance.
See, that, you know, you mentioned something that kind of makes me wonder and think a bit, because Brett, you said that you had your own opinions and what you would like to do, but yet it's incumbent upon the committee to try and come up with some solutions. And I feel like even though the people on this committee may have some expertise in part of this, we're kind of flying blind here, because we don't know all of the ins and outs of things. I'd actually like a legal opinion, because these culverts these boxes are going in to the right of way. They do benefit the entire village, even though they're part of a driveway onto private property, whether that particular sentiment, you know, whether that is actually true, or whether it's it can be done.
So, you know, this is how committees spend government funds. You, as a committee, vote a recommendation to go get a legal opinion on this item. You vote on it, you approve it, it goes to council, council says, okay, let's do it, and then I'm compelled to go do it. I mean, I know it's paperwork, but I'm just saying, if you wanna do it right, you guys could, through the council, could direct me to spend money any way that you guys want. And I'm gonna do my best, whether I agree with it or not, to fulfill that, sure. But I'm just saying, that's the right way. If you want that, I mean, I could call up our lawyer, but every time I get on the phone with her, it's $300.
Of course.
So.
I understand that.
And right now, she is 2 weeks behind on things I have in front of her. But still, the right way to do it is for you guys to, and it doesn't have to be just this, it could be other things. Because whatever ordinance you write is gonna go to legal counsel anyhow.
Right.
So if you need advice from legal counsel, as a matter of fact, you could even request that we pay for legal counsel to come to one of your meetings.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. That's too expensive.
I mean, I'm just saying, these are the things you can do, and the right way to do it is for you to vote on them as a recommendation, council approves it, and then I gotta go do it.
Yeah, I understand how that process works.
Okay, all right.
Hey,
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
Kurt, did you have other issues?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got to the first two.
but I do like the idea of doing some participation if we can.
Yeah.
I really think that would benefit the village long term.
I'll,
It would make everybody less negative about doing it, about having to do it.
Well,
Yeah.
so, you know, we need to explore the possibility.
yeah, and I agree, anything that makes things better is great, but again, I have to look at all the potential concerns. If we have the people that put the box culverts in as required, have the people that do them when it's recommended, that have the means, and then we go into a cost sharing scenario with those people that either refuse to do it or don't have the means, then the people that did it right in the proper,
Yeah,
if
well-
plain and simple, if we're gonna do cost sharing, should do it for every single one.
I agree.
No, I don't. I don't agree with that. I think it's only the people that show the financial needs. The ones that refuse, those are the ones that you elevate into the enforcement. It's the same thing for the Firewood Angels organization. We did 183 pickup loads of wood delivery last winter. And every one of those was by financial necessity because they couldn't afford wood prices.
Yeah.
But we
I'm
refused to donate wood to people that could afford.
And I'm sure there's a means to legally establish
Yeah.
those financial
Right.
needs, but not enough experience in it to go, okay, one thing I wanted to note, and I guess just for clarification, it needs to be clarified, it's in here, it's good, but I think really I guess, made a note that it doesn't seem to be understood by public and development. This is 7-1-4-10.
Say again,
7-1-4-10. Down and section B, letter C, down where it says, be certified by a professional engineer licensed in the state of New Mexico. I highlighted it because I wanted to point out that commercial developments or multifamily units or any subdivisions proposed,
okay, I haven't found it yet.
they, a lot of people don't understand that all the design work needs to be engineered.
Okay,
And- 7-1-4-10,
It's construction of required improvements.
yes. And then under infrastructure design and specifications,
right,
yeah, this applies to new construction or access to subdivisions or any roads or infrastructure that's being placed that is going to be taken over by the village. Just wanted to mention that even though it's, here again, in ordinance, like you said, it's just words printed down. A lot of the developers don't realize that they need that engineering, believe it or not. The next thing I want to go to.
Where do you find that that's an issue here in the village with because we're talking about, subdivision improvements?
Well, it covers subdivision or any commercial building or anything like that. They have a tendency to submit plans that aren't engineered.
Well, how do they get approved?
Oh, they don't get approved
Okay.
by me. But it also brings up a point that there is a disconnect, that we need to work on, between planning and zoning and, public works. There's recently a commercial project, that all of the plans were approved. But my little portion of the work, which is the encroachment permit in the entrance, the design of the entrance. What was passed by planning and zoning, a building permit issued, I would not have approved the design, and it was engineered, but the engineer did not do a design that was conducive with our code. Fortunately, the work was still done properly by code, but the initial plan set was approved by planning and zoning. I'm not involved in the approval process with planning and zoning at all. So,
Are they needing better education? As to what's in the,
I believe so. That's my opinion, yes. Because there were other engineering elements within those plans that should have been more closely reviewed. And I'll have to just leave it at that. Another thing I noticed was in the same, actually under D, down at the bottom of that page where it says assurance of completion of improvements. You go 2 pages past that, all the way to letter I, which is acceptance and maintenance of improvements. And it states down on number 3 that the developer shall be required to record a bond or cause a bond to be executed by the contractor with the village public works director prior to dedication. I feel that just saying bond is very loose-ended. I think some people refer to it as a performance bond. Some people call it a surety bond, but I think that language should be corrected. Because just bond covers a broad scope of things. Now to 7-1-4-13. Under the letter D, snow deposits. I highlighted this because this is a significant issue. No person shall plow, shovel, or otherwise deposit or cause to be deposited any snow upon any public way or any portion thereof. It is a violation of this subsection to plow, shovel, blow, sweep snow directly from a sidewalk, driveway, residence, or otherwise deposit snow which impairs the use of the street by vehicular traffic. The provision of this subsection the provisions of this subsection do not apply to persons brushing off snow that has accumulated naturally upon a motor vehicle parked or driven upon a public driveway or public way. It is a big problem where snow is pushed off of driveways and across the road. I get that. I will say that there are some homes that there's no other option. There's just no other way to do it. But it is in policy and it is enforceable and we have enforced it. On occasion, it does still continue to happen. I will say it is a source of some damage to roads. Particularly when we get snow like we got the first week of May where even our plowing did significant damage to the roads, but it was necessary.
So are you saying that when the snowplow blocks me in on my driveway because they pushed everything onto it, when I shovel it back out into the road against the ordinance?
Yes, that's
Because
what
I'm
he's saying.
mad.
That's what he's saying.
It's up for discussion.
Don't they have a thing to put down so it doesn't block your driveway?
No, I know everybody's seen the video on YouTube of the little wing that comes down and sweeps the driveway and comes back up. Every one of those videos in a subdivision with paved curb and gutter and concrete driveways. Unfortunately, even though we didn't need them this winter, a very important part of our snow removal equipment is the snow wing on the motor grader. That allows us to do big swaths and big areas at a time. And you can't have one of those little snow wings and the big one at the same time. They don't function. And unfortunately, the motor graders have the ability to shift and swing snow away from driveways. As long as it's not like that last snow, even the motor grader couldn't swing snow. But in the plow trucks, and the wetter the snow gets and the deeper it gets, they don't have the ability to just swing the snow away from the driveway. And even if they are swung away from the driveway, if the snow's over 10 inches deep, it still rolls in front of the driveway. And also the thought of, as we have it now on average, we can get every road open and cleared in 8 to 9 hours. If we did stop and make sure that berm was pushed on every driveway, it'd take us a few days to get all the roads.
It's annoying when you've already shoveled your driveway. Like,
Yeah.
Welcome to Angel Fire.
I've only been here 10 years, and it still bugs me every time they do it.
Yeah. And I will say the guys do make an effort when they can, when it's doable. Another thing, if there's a road that curves and if your house is on the outside of the curve, even with it rolled all the way out, snow makes its way. And it is a point of frustration for people. And when the conditions allow, the guys, they do make the effort to not deposit too much. But I also, like an example, it's a neighbor of mine, a few blocks away that I drive by every day. And in the wintertime, he has no option but to push the snow out across the road. And he takes it across the road, and his driveway is here, and across the road, his neighbor's driveway is here. He pushes the snow to the other side of the road. And when the snow plow comes, we call it the upstream side. It always plows the upstream side. All the snow that this guy has pushed ends up in front of his neighbor's driveway. So I personally, what I do if I clear my driveway before the snow plow is there, I go out and clear the edge of the road, the berm on the edge of the road, so if they are coming along rolling, that it's deposited right there and not all into my driveway. Anyway, snow deposits and people pushing out on the roads is a big, issue in the town. And, again, it goes back to enforcement. It's clearly stated in ordinance. Going down next to, under letter E, enforcement, says issue of notice. If the village clerk finds that any person has violated the provisions of this section, the village clerk may notify the person of the duty to remove sand, gravel, rocks, mud, dirt, snow, or any other debris or material so deposited within 24 hours from the date of notice. My question here is it the village clerk or is it the code enforcement officer? As far as issuance of notice.
Right.
Well, why define it as anyone? Say, why not just say if the village?
Absolutely.
Then it doesn't have to be a clerk who's not out there, obviously, looking.
Yeah.
It can be code enforcement, it can be the public works. You're not limiting this verbiage to a specific position.
Okay. Well,
Great point. Because I also noticed it down on number 2. If the person so notifies fails to remove the debris required by the notice described in this section, or if the village clerk determines that an emergency exists. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that should read Village of Angel Fire.
Yeah, that,
Yeah, that's much more simple than.
and I don't even know that
You could-
unpaid charges need to the village finance director for collection. I'm not sure the finance director is the proper authority for collection. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe it is, but I'm not sure that it is.
Checking that. And, yeah, I mean, it definitely wouldn't be good to put it as if the village clerk or if the, public works director. Yeah, finds that because as we recall,
No,
for quite a time, there was no public works director.
because then you can have your own internal organization processes and stuff. If you see something, you can go to tell Joel, he can go write it up, and then it can go through the proper channels and
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you. Okay. Next, want to go to 7-1-5-2. Geometric criteria. And if you want to flip over to the next page, down to table 7B. And the following page 7.3 or 7C, I'm sorry. I highlighted this to hopefully initiate some discussion. About, we were speaking about, aggregate, desegregation, everything, so forth and so on, and speeds and this, that, and the other. This table is it's design speed, and it's criteria to establish what speed limits should be. Okay. And, 7B deals with stopping sight distance, passing sight distance. 7C deals with a curvature in the roads. Kind of the same thing, line of sight, what have you. And I wanted to state that it's my feeling that in some places where roads continually deteriorate or require constant nonstop maintenance, that speed is a definite factor. In my opinion, we have some areas, generally our speed limits are 25 miles an hour on all roads. And I've had feedback from people in the community that feel that 25 miles an hour is too fast in some areas. So I wanted, to make you aware that we do have an ordinance, design criteria that's a set speed limit. Speed limits, I should say. And, if you're out driving around, take some of these things into consideration. Line of sight, stopping distance, passing distance, curvature of the road. And I think you'll find that we have sections of road that potentially should be 15 mile an hour instead of 25 mile an hour.
But right now, we don't enforce 25 and people drive like that's out of hell.
Yes, ma'am. And that's exactly what I was told by law enforcement.
Yeah.
But maybe if we post 15, they'll go 25. I don't know. But here again, it all goes back to enforcement and the challenge of that. It's hard we got a great police department, but it's hard for them to be everywhere at once. We're 128 miles of road. But I wanted to bring it to attention because it's something that I see as an effect on the roads. I have been to places that have posted low speed limits that, once people get used to it, it does seem to happen. But yeah, I'm very well aware, Camino Real is a road that's used as an example for so many challenges and so many issues, as it is, I think, the busiest dirt road up here. And, has the big, a lot of challenges with grade and curvature and everything else. And speed, absolutely. And, but it's very easy you can park there by the road and watch the effects of the speed on the road. And I just wanted to make it a point of conversation.
Oh, I went around a curve the other day and I'm like, 25 is too fast with this gravel.
Yeah.
Like, that was scary.
Yeah.
Do you
So,
have any idea the posted speed limit from in front of Olympic Park all the way up to past those condos is 15 miles an hour? Why is that the entire, I understand Olympic Park being a slower speed limit, but wintertime, trying to keep your speed down to 15, if that road is slick,
You're riding the brakes.
you're
you're not gonna get up.
You're
the
done.
hill.
You better be off the brakes.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious why that entire section is, and I'm asking the wrong people, because that should be law enforcement, on the law enforcement side, but being public works. I'm curious why that one section has to be 15, because that, even in the summertime, that's difficult to try and keep it even at 25.
Sure. And I asked the question of Chief Holgriff when he first started. And, I had to tell you about Chief Holgriff. When you ask him about something, I mean, the next day, I get an answer. I mean, he had just started, just getting his feet wet. And I said, hey, if you get a chance, go out and I want to understand these speed limits and why it would be 15 over there. And he came back and he said, well, they probably took into account that the park was there. But he also said, there's really no reason for that section from San Mateo. From Spyglass up San Mateo to the condos. He said, there's really no reason for that to be 25.
I suspect that some people in the condo were very vocal. Because they've got kids there and they
Oh,
really
yeah.
are concerned.
And people drive
They do.
really fast on that road.
They
I
drive
can
crazy.
share an experience. I was up there plowing snow and you wouldn't think it, but a guy passed me easily over 50 miles an hour. It is.
I think they do spyglass at 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter what if you had whatever the posted speed limit was, they're gonna
No.
drive like they do in the major metro areas that they come from.
Sure.
There are no speed limits, whatever the people, the mass drives at, because if you drive slower, you're gonna create problems.
Yeah. Yeah, but something to think about. And, I mean, Chief Holgriff gave some great feedback and, on this, we don't battle over it, but it's a point of discussion from time to time and about, looking at lowering some speed limits in some places. And, and again, El Camino Real as an example, there's some of those curves there that you're really blind going around them. And it's not just to make the road, help the road stay smoother or whatever, but it's the fact that there are some places that I feel in good conditions, 25, you're going too fast. Now, we also, in the winter time, it's a given that people will see a posted speed limit sign and assume that it's good year round. And all the calls since I've started this job to go assist public safety with crashes and wrecks, every single one of them have been El Camino Real. Okay, so moving forward. Let's see, tables. It looks like 7-1-5-4. Pavement structural design criteria. Section, I guess, or paragraph D, number 4.
Say again?
It's the paragraph, it's on the next page from, where it says 7-1-5-4. Under D, as in David, number 4.
Okay,
Where it notes on gravel roads, the crown, shall be 3%. It is. And my concern with it is, if the curve has a super in it. To explain what a super is curves are not flat this way, they're superimposed to the inside. So what my concern is, if you specify a 3% crown and say you have even a 3% super already, and you put the 3% crown in it, then you sense on one side of the road have a 6% sideways slant. So, again, it's 2% is absolute max on a crown, in all of my opinion. So that's something that we may look at addressing, but there may need to be some verbiage in there, because it actually, through curves of road, you probably don't want the combination of a crown and a super. Because where we do have that scenario, the roads are very hard to maintain and navigate in certain
If I'm not
conditions.
mistaken, I think even a concrete street in a residential area is I think it's 2% is all,
Yeah, two's pretty much
which definitely drains the water off of it.
Yeah. And you wouldn't think that 1 extra percent would make a difference, but like I said, if you're in that scenario where the road already has a super and you put that 2% crown, then it's just something I noticed.
I'll have to check on that because I don't remember. I have a source that my son is a PE, civil PE, and I can ask him about on radiuses and stuff, whether the crown, and I'll ask him.
Yeah,
But I don't know that, from my experience, on concrete and asphalt and stuff, when you start into that curve, that crown essentially goes away, so it maintains a constant flow, and it's not trying to drain off
Mhm.
both directions with a crown typically in the center.
Yeah, because on the uphill side, you end up with a flat spot on it.
Right.
Now, as I understand, the amount of super in a road is determined a lot by the speed going into it. One can get an example of a lot of different extremes of super and going up the pass towards Taos. Now, there's some of those curves that have they have a real tight radius, so they've got a lot of super to them. and they help you stay on the road and keep from drifting apart, but then the issue is where a big truck or something has to stop at that point and it starts sliding. So just something I would mention. Okay, again, another thing, you know, we touched on it a little bit, but it's at 7-1-5-6. Snow stacking for driveways shall be provided on owner's property. Use of public right of ways for snow storage by private individuals or companies is prohibited. Accumulations prohibited on pedestrian ways. A new owner, manager, agent, or occupant of real property in the village shall allow snow or ice to accumulate in public, sidewalks, pedestrian pathways abutting their property. And they shall have joint and equal responsibility for the removal of all such snow and ice. Individual owners, managers, agents, or occupants of real property shall provide continuous removal of snow and ice on public sidewalks and pedestrian pathways abutting to their property. Then you see just below that on number 1, the Village of Angel Fire shall conduct snow and ice removal for all sidewalks and pedestrian passageways abutting public right-of-ways in response to a significant snow event. A significant snow event is when there is an accumulation of at least 4 inches of snow within a 24-hour period. What I've got to say about letter C is when the attempt was made to enforce that, the sidewalks just didn't get cleared. Okay, so with the previous administration, they had decided that the best thing to do is just have our maintenance guy go clear them, and it's been great ever since. And even though it's basically saying that, you know, every business is responsible for the sidewalks in front of their property, I think it's something that we should consider either rewording or taking out completely. I know there's a similar ordinance in most cities, if you will, where residents are expected to keep the sidewalk clear in front of their house. I think that that's applicable in a, you know, maybe more of a subdivision scenario where houses are right next to each other. But to say if it's a property owner or business owner, I'll use Village Ski Shop for an example. He has a ski shop, he has all of his parking areas. And even though Mickey will gladly remove the snow from his sidewalks, that's a lot. It's a lot more than just a little bit of sidewalk that you might see if you lived in the city. You know, and also, you know, with our continuing efforts to just want to do what's best for the community, our maintenance crew currently goes out when it snowed, when conditions require it, and we clear the sidewalks and we'll sand them or whatever we need to do. And with that said, looking at number 1, where it says the Village of Angel Fire shall conduct snow and ice removal for all sidewalks and pedestrian pathways. Significant snow, if it is an accumulation of 4 inches of snow within a 24-hour period. I think there is somewhat of a logic to trying to establish at what point warrants going out and do snow removal. We experience it in streets. You know, I think there's something similar that had been established for them, even though I don't see it in Title VII. But it was just kind of the rule of thumb when we'll go plow if it's less than 3 inches. Okay. I will say that this winter, even though we had a drastic lack of snow, we consumed more salt cinders this winter than we did the winter before. Every time that we were getting 1 to 2 inches of snow after it had been warm the week before, town turned into a sheet of ice. So I personally, and again, I know, you know, I don't want to write ordinance just to my preferences, but to me, to put a number in, like, we're not going to go out unless there's 4 inches. I think it should really read that, you know, Village of Angel Fire will be out when snow and ice removal is necessary. Just wanted to get thoughts on that.
Okay.
think you're gonna have people who think they need it in the end.
You know,
Calling you.
there was a time where when people were calling, because there was an inch of snow, I kind of laughed about it. And then this winter, there were days where we had an inch and it got, as I like to say, it got sporty out there. So, especially on the paved roads and on some of our steeper roads, so. Let's see. I think that is all of 7-1.
So do the sidewalks that run in front of these individual businesses, do they belong to the businesses? Are they? Or does it belong to the village?
To the village.
Hmm.
Even the sidewalks on 434 here in the state right of way belong to the village of Angel.
So what's the difference between a sidewalk being in the right of way and belongs to the village and a box culvert that's put in the right of way in front of a individual's property? That's why I think it would be interesting to have some sort of a legal opinion.
Yeah. So I don't know, but the sidewalks were paid with state money.
Right.
Yeah,
So.
Still tax money,
Yeah.
good point.
but
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but logic would dictate it's the same thing. And I know that in a lot of bureaucratic circles, logic doesn't
Yeah.
apply.
Well, it's, the sidewalks are short and the box culverts are many.
Well, yeah.
That's a good point, but you hit the nail on the head. You're saying government and logic in the same sentence. I mean, yeah,
Right.
We're trying to use the system.
but that's the beauty of committees is we don't lose sight of logic. Okay. Okay, so I think that's all in 7-1, and I just only have just a few more. Next one is 7-2-3. We talked about this a little bit earlier already. As far as insurance and licensing. I think somewhere in here is you know, for the encroachment permits, that insurance and licensure should be required as the as part of the 2-3.
Got it.
But I don't quite know where that would go in, because everything listed under permit and compliance required. It basically lists all the scenarios where the permit is required. We don't have I can't find where it's clearly stated of what's required for the permit. As far as insurance, license, workers' comp and business license.
Isn't that addressed back over on the on 7-1?
No, not in regards to the licensing, workers' comp or business license, or insurance, workers' comp or business license.
Well, here again, it's bureaucratic.
Yeah, but given that
Weeds, but you could go back to that 7-1 under encroachment permits that we submittal requirements. And add we were already talking about adding liability insurance to that, but we could add a couple of other bullet points to address.
given as chapter 2 is defined as right of way encroachments specifically, and that's what 7-2 is. That perhaps the language needs to be in both places. A lot of what's in 7-1 is relates to subdivisions, developments, you know, businesses being built. But just and that's why I've kind of got it as a question mark. And the question mark is where do we need to specify that? And is it in 7-1 or is it in 7-2? The other thing I noted is under the construction activities, it lists utility installation, driveways, parking pads or structures contiguous to the right of way for drainage structures. It doesn't specify clearly, and it should, that it kind of should be any activities that cross the right of way. And, you know, here again, to use the example is slash removal, block clearing. People are going through the bar ditch, building roads through it, but also if slash is piled on the road, there should be an encroachment permit that verifies that that material is gonna be moved or removed, and then after it's removed, that the road hasn't been damaged. So point of discussion, if we need to change the language on that to require to more clearly define the need for an encroachment permit to basically include any work that's gonna be done on the right of way. Okay. On the security deposits, you know, under C, terms of security deposit, I wanted to make a note. Now, I have not had or have not taken the time to thoroughly examine all the pertinent resolutions to see where in resolution the current deposit fee was established. I'm gonna, you know, continue to look for that more and see, but Clerk Strickland looked for it also. We're having a kind of a hard time seeing where the deposit fee is in resolution, and it really needs to be. And I think we would want it in resolution instead of ordinance, because then it can be adjusted a lot easier in resolution than an ordinance.
Right.
Okay. Now I skip to 7-2-8. Start talking about optional water meter installation for new construction. I have some concerns about this because this is something that at this point I'm not a fan of and have not allowed to happen. And its requirements for contractors to install their own water meter shall be as follows. I feel that village personnel should be installing all water meters.
That was because at some point in time before your tenure started, village wasn't capable of doing that.
They weren't getting them done.
That's right.
We talked about it this morning as we were reviewing the list of meters, and we just got 11 new ones for new construction. But beyond that, the list was, I think, 5. And we were reflecting back to last year when it was 42.
Mm-hmm.
Some that have been waiting over 2 years. And I have, just so you know, I have tasked the water department and have told council that it is my goal to have the water department at a state where when they get an order for a water meter, that they can get that meter in within 2 weeks. Because they used to be that way. And they're pretty much there, so. But I also wanted to note that here, under 7-2-8, general contractors must provide a copy of current license and insurance for each installation before installation can begin. Plumbing contractors must provide a copy of their current license and insurance for each installation. Excavators must provide a copy of their current license and insurance for each installation before excavation. I will say that since we have started asking people when doing encroachment permits to provide their proof of insurance and contractor's license, all the contractors have been very happy about it. Okay. We know there's some unlicensed work that goes on, but I do have to, you know, be realistic and say that some people, it is their only option to get the work done to perhaps deal with somebody that's not licensed. Because maybe those licensed contractors are too backlogged. So that, I get that, I understand that. But I, as a contractor, still licensed, think that the people are licensed for a reason, and you will get better work, but it does appear to me that, sometimes it's the only option people have. Might be the only option they can get. Might be the only option they can afford.
So if I'm a new homeowner here and I hire an unlicensed contractor and they don't do the job correctly, that generally only impacts me. But then when I get ready to sell that house and the new buyer comes in and they don't know the shortcuts that were taken, or they don't know the things that may end up costing them a lot of money. That's where I think it's really unfair.
That could turn into a very long discussion, and I've already babbled on for quite some time now, so.
What kind of taps, I see here that it says use of wet taps is prohibited. How are you tapping your main lines?
What this section here is, as it's referring to the installation by contractors of these components, what it's saying is they don't want the contractors doing the wet taps.
Oh, so the villages, you guys are doing the wet tap.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah, we would prefer to do them ourselves. There is a section in here where it states that if the indicator that's on the lot of where the water service is at has been disturbed or destroyed, and the service can't be found and a wet tap is required, then the owner needs to assume that cost. And it does happen. Okay, we're in the home stretch. And I'd actually highlighted it. It's in section 7-3-5. Section B, meter installation charges.
Section what? D is in David?
B is in Bob.
Oh.
Number 2. And I actually just spoke of it. I'll just go ahead and read it. The installation charges for all meters are based on the existence of a service line at the customer's property. In the case where the property owner and or his designee has destroyed the service line locator wire, or in cases where the service line has not been extended to the property line, the customer will pay for the additional cost to extend a new service line from the main water line and to the property line. The additional cost will include the cost of materials, labor, equipment, road restoration, and any other related cost. Then just kind of a point of discussion to get past that. Let's see, 7-3-5. If you go to letter D on the following page, and all the way down to number 3. Well, let me back up. On number 2, a reconnect charge. Want to note that the rates listed as $50. In each of these places, those rates are going to be adjusted this year. Some of the rates in ordinance are 20 years old. But if you look down on, let's see, and this one gets all over the place. So D3, A, and then you have a 1, 2, 3, and 4, where it has disconnection fee of $50, a reconnection fee of $50. Those rates are going to be changing as well.
What about the 75 and 100 in the next 2?
Yeah,
And-
yeah, everything's,
Okay.
all those rates are going to be changing.
Yeah, there can be some, we ought to be able to change the verbiage in that to say some kind of per existing fee structure or something like that.
Well, here again, that's
And
where
you set up a actual fee structure, and then this document can refer to that fee structure that's Right.
I think anytime having fees and ordinance, there's so much more involved in changing it. I mean, you know, and we do like our rate changes and everything, that's all done in resolution. So, you know, it can be done by CPI and, you know, where, if we end up in these situations where we have rates that maybe were relevant 20 years ago, but aren't covering our costs now. And then it's a whole, you know, so there's a point of discussion as a committee. Do we think of taking all dollar amounts out of ordinance and getting resolutions on there?
But I also think it's, you know, I agree with where you're going with that, but it's also incumbent upon the council to decide ultimately whether they feel that these fees, even though it doesn't cover the public works costs long-term, it's a benefit to the village to have this home and homeowner here. So they're willing to take that hit,
Sure.
so to speak.
Sure.
Yeah.
And again, coming up with something that addresses all the given scenarios, you know, like if it's somebody that's trying to address a leak in a house with their plumber, and they ask us to go, you know, it's on the main line to the house, and they want us to go out there and shut it off. And they think they get it fixed, we go out and turn it on, and it's leaking again. So we do 4 or 5 trips out there turning it on and off. My mind, we're helping that person in the community resolve their situation.
Mhm.
If it's somebody that, hey, I'm gonna be gone for a month, turn my water off. We're gonna be back on this day, come out, turn it back on. I get it, maybe they don't wanna, you know, risk water loss or whatever. But if the reasons are, dare I say, a burden or unavoidable, that's one thing, but
It's not your responsibility to go out to be their house manager.
I understand, and I know where the cutoff point was this winter when we were having water meter freezing issues. Got people calling, hey, can you run up to our house and see if the water's still working? No, gotta call your property management.
Right.
So,
I'm going to have to go. I have people coming at 3:30 to my house to do some work.
Okay,
okay,
alright, so I'm gonna ask Kurt a question here. And that question is if Kurt and I, but mostly Kurt, can get all these changes into a draft form by the end of the month.
it's possible, anything's possible.
Is that too quick?
It's quick, but I like a challenge. Yeah,
Okay.
so I say yes, let's try to do that.
If that's the case, I wanna look at scheduling another meeting if I can get 2 minutes of your time. A meeting the last week of the month. Maybe Friday the 27th.
I can probably do that.
What was the date?
I can do that, no probably about it. If I commit today, I will be here.
Right,
What time?
1 o'clock, or is there a better time? All right now, we're gonna shoot for June 27th at 1 p.m. We will bring our understanding of our discussion back to you. You'll go through it. If we find that we didn't quite capture everything, we'll schedule another meeting to do that. if we did get it right, then we'll be ready to go to legal, and then after legal, we'll go to council.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
What were the changes on 4 and 5 real quick? Anything,
The only thing I had left noted in, in 4 was 7-4-1. Under letter B, I do not like the wording of this. It says the provision of subsection A of this sections are not applicable to any, and basically what it's talking about is if sewer is available, if people have to tie into. The provisions of subsection A of this section are not applicable to any property owner with an existing advanced treatment system that meets current village and state codes. You know, I don't know if by specifying an advanced treatment system, that's different than a conventional system. If a conventional system meets state codes and passes in inspection or is in compliance, I don't know that we can require them to hook up to sewer, but maybe we can. But further on, it says, after it says that meets current village and state codes and requirements and whose existing system would require the utilization of an E1 grinder pump. E1 is a brand name.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. So it would need,
you can strike the E1.
yeah, but you can't just put grinder pump because what it needs in a pressurized system is grinder pump capable of generating a certain pressure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
up to, you could add something like just scratch the E1, but say grinder pump to meet specifications of the main line.
like pressurized.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
The
That-
storm
that-
issue
that would
right my
cover it.
router.
Yeah.
Kit Carson is coming out and that's
Yeah.
kind of important to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we adjourned? Or not yet?
We're not done.
And then 5, what do you have there?
I didn't have anything in
Okay.
5.
So what's, I think we're done now.
We're done.
Okay.